10 years ago, I had lost my mom, and about that same time started my photography journey. I didn't plan to make a film about this, but I kinda did with this video. And now, a decade later, I'm chasing the places that shaped my family and the ones that ended up shaping me. So, what is this video? It's not a camera review, it's not a travel documentary, and it's not anything like your typical vlog. It's honestly just the closing chapter of a project I didn't realize I was working on until 10 years after my mom had passed. I never intended to make a project about grief that I've been carrying since losing her, but I guess I did. You see, when my mom was real sick towards the end, we were able to speak a little bit. I had just begun my journey into photography not too long before she went into the hospital. There, she encouraged me to pursue my passion with photography because she saw something in me when I talked about it, even back then. Photography became this strange, accidental form of therapy. Every frame felt like a conversation with someone who wasn't there anymore. And somewhere along the way, I realized these images weren't really about the places or even the moments. They were about the people I was carrying with me when I was shooting. My mom used to tell me when I was struggling, there is no spot you are not. At the time, it sounded poetic, and now I think she meant it literally. On this trip, these were my travel companions. The Canon 20D, 21-year-old DSLR dinosaur that refuses to die. The chunky metal body feels great in my fat finger hands, and the controls were extremely easy to use. The user interface was also very easy to navigate. The 8.2 megapixels still hold up to my Lightroom adjustments. This was my primary digital shooter on this trip for obvious reasons. I didn't want to come home empty-handed, and the drawback to this camera was the very tiny LCD screen on the back. It harkens back to the early 2000s, but it did get its job done, but I wouldn't say it's fast or bright or big. Then we've got Papa's Minolta Maxxum 5000, or what I used to call the high dollar Minolta when I was growing up. One of the first in-body autofocus SLRs ever sold. And honestly, one look at this thing just screams the 80s. It'll shoot up to 1/2000th of a second and go fully manual when you want to. The autofocus by today's standard is optimistic. But the thing still smells like Papa when I hold it to my face, and that brings a whole lot of memories with it. And the final boss of this trip, the ever so pocketable behemoth, my great-grandfather's Kodak Autographic 1A. It's a beautiful example from 1914. It originally shot 1/16 film roll stock, which doesn't exist anymore, so I've purchased some 3D printed 1/16 to 120 adapters and hope for the best. The negatives from these things are massive, almost panoramic. Framing through the tiny top-down viewfinder with my bad eyes felt very period correct, and the shutter sounds very elderly. I even have a photo with my family holding this exact camera. I'll show it to you here. These weren't props, they were heirlooms. Pieces of a story I didn't realize I'd been carrying. And who knows, maybe one day my son will pick up one of these things and add his own chapter after I'm gone. First stop of the trip was Cabezon Peak. It just stared at me from the highway like, dude, you've been driving past me for years. Now's the time. So I pulled off Highway 550, walked around with the Canon 20D in hand, and talked to myself for probably way too long, if I'm being honest with myself. I needed to shake off the creative nerves before hitting the real planned locations. This wasn't about taking good photos. It was just about warming up my photographic eye. I just happened to get a few good shots out of it as well. The next stop was the ever-popular Chaco Canyon ruins. There were a lot of tourists that day, and honestly, it threw me off my game. Between the crowds and the sheer scale of the ruins, which were way bigger than I expected. That's what she said. But honestly, it threw me completely off. My non-social butterfly self was hunting for dark corners and empty frames while passing many compositions. I made mistakes here, a lot of them. To top it off, I even managed to forget the original Chaco negative from my great-grandfather. I'm not even convinced I even shot the same ruin he did. I had his Kodak in my hands, and I still miss the moment. Light leaks, rush shooting, developing choices, it all shows. I only got one decent image that was worth keeping, and by decent, I'm being very generous. But maybe that day wasn't about capturing the ruins. Maybe it was just about being there, with his camera and his memory. Berg Park in Farmington, New Mexico. My old hometown. That doesn't really feel like home anymore. And a location I've always been hesitant to go back to. Cottonwoods and the Animas River make this park beautiful to walk. This is where my obsession with photography really began. Walking here again, camera in hand, the images felt like a full circle moment for me. I searched for the frames I shot in 2015 when my mom was ill, and I could really feel her with me while I was there. After the park, I went to the First Church of Christ Science. That's where my mom found her strength. Where we sat together on Sundays when I visited, and probably the last place I sat next to her that wasn't in the hospital. The camera, for whatever reason, didn't record, so I lost all the footage from the church location. At first, I was frustrated, but honestly, part was probably just really meant for me. The images here feel frozen in time, and the shot from the Kodak nails how this image fits in my head. Faded, but still there. Shiprock, the penultimate destination of this journey. Papa photographed it decades ago, and I wanted to stand exactly where he stood. The GPS had other plans. I ended up miles from where I had intended to be, but standing out there in the wind, I realized something. You never stand exactly where your hero stood, you just get close enough to feel the echo they left behind. I pulled out all the cameras here. Fired off the Minolta with the 50mm and the 70-300 beer can lens, capturing some truly timeless images of Shiprock. The Kodak didn't disappoint here either. Here, the character of the Kodak sings, all the flaws from the camera only adding to the emotional feeling of this image. After fighting the wind for a while, I drove to the other side of the monument, and that's where I found it. This incredible composition, a muddy puddle, and what turned out to be the best photo of the entire trip. Final stop, Southr, Colorado, where much of my family rests. Papa, Nana, Leslie, Granny, Aunt Katie, and of course, my mom. I walked those memory-stained paths at sunrise, talking to whoever was listening on the other side. It didn't feel like visiting the past, it felt like saying thank you. This trip wasn't only about looking back. It was about seeing the world the way they once did, and adding my own perspective. So that's a trip, and if you stayed this long, thank you. 10 years after losing my mom and a decade of unintentional photographs, it all turned into something deeply personal. If you've got ghosts in your life, in cameras, in landscapes, or places you've been avoiding, go find them. Because sometimes the picture isn't about the photo album, sometimes it's just for whoever comes after you. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and consider subscribing for more camera-related content and dirtbag photography in general. You can also find my prints on PicFair, read my blog, and see more photography over on Instagram and TikTok. All the links are listed down below. Thanks again for being here. Bye.